He saved two babies from the trash. And 20 years later, a surprise happened that changed his life. Elias had always lived in the shadows of the city. A man of wiry build with a silver beard and tired eyes, he wandered the alleys and sidewalks with a quiet dignity that most overlooked. Dressed in a weather-beaten green jacket and a knit hat far too thin for winter, he pushed a rickety shopping cart filled with old books, broken radios, and two folded blankets. For most people, Elias was invisible, but his mind was sharp, and his heart hadn't grown cold, though the world had given him every reason to let it. He used to be a skilled repairman. Years ago, Elias ran a tiny radio repair shop off Roosevelt Avenue. The shop was cluttered with wires and screwdrivers, and it always smelled of solder and dust. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, and Elias loved it. He had a wife named Norrin, warm, graceful, with a laugh that lit up the corners of a room, and a son named Peter, who'd once called him the smartest man in the world. But after Norrin got sick, everything changed. The medical bills came in waves, and Elias sold off everything to try to save her, his tools, his shop. Even the old clock Noreen had gifted him on their 10th anniversary. When she died, the light in Elias's world vanished. Peter, only 17 at the time, became bitter, distant. They fought. Words were said, and one day Peter left, vanished into the city with no goodbye. That was the day Elias stopped fixing things. He started walking instead. Every morning, Elias would push his cart along the quieter parts of the city. He knew where to find warm air vents, which dumpsters held expired fruit, and which churches served soup on Thursdays. He never begged, and he never complained. That's just who Elias was. But on one cold morning, everything changed. The sky was pale and heavy with clouds as Elias trudged down Maple Street, taking his usual shortcut behind Westwood Grocery. There was a large green dumpster behind the building. It was usually filled with stale bread and old lettuce. Elias had found bruised apples there before. He walked past it slowly. Then he heard it, a sound faint and shaky, a cry. At first he thought it was a cat, but it was too high-pitched, too desperate. Elias stopped, turned, and moved closer. His hands trembled as he lifted the dumpster lid. There, nestled between two trash bags, were two newborn babies, tiny, barely wrapped in a thin towel. Their dark skin was cold to the touch. One of them, a boy, was crying softly. The other, a girl, was motionless, her eyelids fluttering weakly. Elias froze. For a moment, his breath caught. Then he sprang into action. He pulled off his coat, wrapped them both inside, and pressed them to his chest. "You're okay, little ones," he whispered. "I've got you now." He didn't think. He just moved down the street past blinking lights and icy sidewalks. Elias stumbled into St. Mary's Hospital. His knees were aching and his arms were numb, but he didn't stop until he reached the reception desk. The nurse behind it gasped. "Please," Elias said, "help them." What followed was chaos. Doctors and nurses swarmed around the babies. A pediatric team was called. Warmers were brought in. Elias stood outside the emergency room, soaked with sweat and snow, watching every second like his life depended on it. "Where did you find them?" a nurse named Clara asked gently. "In a dumpster," he said, his voice cracking. "Behind Westwood Grocery." "Your coat." "It kept them from freezing," she whispered. Elias stayed at the hospital all night. A volunteer gave him coffee. Another offered a pair of dry socks. He refused to leave. "I just want to know they'll be okay," he said. The next morning, Clara approached with a smile. "They made it," she said. "Both of them. We've named them temporary for now, Aiden and Amara, but they're stable." Elias wept. He didn't know why those children were left there, but in a strange way, holding them had sparked something in him, a warmth he thought he'd lost forever. In the following weeks, Ellis became a familiar face at the hospital. He visited daily, sitting quietly outside the nursery window, watching Aiden and Amara grow stronger. Clara often brought him tea. Sometimes she'd chat with him about their names, about how Amara always gripped her tiny fist in her sleep, and how Aiden loved the sound of music. And Elias, he began to smile again. But good things, he knew, rarely lasted long. Social services arrived. The twins would be placed in foster care. Elias had no home, no income, no legal grounds. He couldn't adopt them, no matter how much his heart begged him to. Clara stood with him that night as he watched the babies being wheeled away. "You saved them," she whispered. "That matters." He nodded, eyes full of tears. And then, just like that, they were gone. Elias returned to the streets. But he wasn't the same. He started fixing things again. Radios from junkyards, bicycles abandoned in alleys. He gave them to local shelters. He helped a blind woman fix her walker. He taught a teenage boy how to fix a lamp. He kept busy, and he waited because something deep inside told him. He hadn't seen the last of those children. 20 years had passed since Elias had found the twins behind that grocery store dumpster. His beard was fully white now, his walk slower, his hands more brittle. He lived at Haven House Shelter, sharing a small corner bed and meals with others who also carried heavy pasts. His life had never quite recovered, but he had found a strange peace in simplicity. Fixing broken flashlights for fellow residents, making toys from scrap, offering advice to young men on the edge of falling through Susak's cracks. Every year on November 3rd, Elias returned to the back alley behind Westwood Grocery, not to relive the moment, but to honor it. He'd leave behind something warm, a scarf, a baby blanket, a pair of mittens. In his heart, it was a thank you to the moment that reminded him his life had once held purpose. He didn't know what became of the babies. Sometimes he imagined they were living quietly in a kind family. He didn't hope for greatness, just safety. A roof, a warm meal, a bedtime story. He never expected what came next. It began with a letter delivered in an envelope with gold trim. The name on the front read simply, Mr. Elias Franklin. Inside on parchment-like paper was a handwritten message. Dear Mr. Franklin, you once saved 2 lives. We never forgot. You are invited to be our guest of honor. Please come to the Riverside Banquet Hall December 12th, 6 p.m. Formula tire not required. Just bring yourself. There was no signature. Elias thought it was a mistake. He hadn't been invited anywhere in decades. But something about the handwriting felt familiar. On the evening of December 12th, he wore his cleanest button-down shirt, a navy blue coat gifted by a shelter volunteer, and polished his old shoes with tissue and hand lotion. He combed his hair, stood a little straighter, and took the donated shuttle bus to Riverside. When he arrived, his heart nearly stopped. The building was glowing with light and laughter. People in suits and gowns mingled in the lobby. Waiters passed trays of sparkling drinks. He approached the door with hesitation. The hostess at the front desk smiled. Mr. Franklin? He nodded cautiously. This way, please. She guided him into a grand ballroom. At first, he felt like he didn't belong, but then the lights dimmed. A young man in a gray suit took the microphone. His hair was braided neatly, and his voice calm but commanding. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we're gathered not just for charity, but for legacy. A second man in a dark blue tuxedo stepped up beside him, taller, broad-shouldered, with an easy smile. The first one spoke again. 20 years ago, My brother and I were left to die behind a grocery store dumpster. We don't remember that day, but we remember who gave us life. The second one smiled, eyes glassy. A man with nothing but his coat. A man who didn't walk past. A man who gave us everything when he had nothing. Elias felt his knees weaken. Someone guided him gently toward the stage. The entire room rose in a standing ovation. The brothers stepped down and wrapped their arms around him. "I'm Amara," the taller one whispered. "And I'm Aiden," said the first. "You named us without even knowing it." Elias couldn't speak. Tears flowed freely down his face as the crowd clapped again, some wiping their eyes. Then Amara turned to the crowd. "Because of Elias, I became a cardiac surgeon, and Aiden here, a structural engineer who just opened his own nonprofit to build affordable homes." Laughter and more applause followed. "But that's not why. We're here," Aiden added. "We're here because it's time to give back." On the screen behind them, an image flashed. A house cozy, with a porch swing and a garden. Amara took Elias's hand and held out a set of keys. "This is yours," he said. "Fully paid for in your name." Elias gasped. "No, I couldn't." "You already did," Aiden said. "And there's more," Amara added. "A monthly stipend, medical coverage, and a workshop out back, fully stocked in case you ever want to keep fixing things." The room burst into applause again. Elias sat down, still in disbelief. "Why me?" he asked in a choked whisper. "Why now?" Aiden smiled. "Because you didn't wait for thanks. You did it when no one else would." The story hit the news the next morning. From forgotten to family, the homeless man who saved 2 babies and was saved in return. Elias moved into the home 2 weeks later. Neighbors welcomed him with casseroles. Kids brought him old radios to fix. And every Friday, Amara and Aiden came by with groceries and updates on their latest projects. Sometimes they laughed. Sometimes they sat in silence, simply enjoying the presence of the man who'd saved their lives. But always Elias looked at them with the same awe. Not because of their degrees, not because of the house, but because in the end, love had come full circle. And the man who had once saved 2 abandoned babies from a dumpster was now surrounded by warmth, dignity, and family. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales. And let us know in the comments where in the world are you watching from. We love hearing from all of you. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious,